Good afternoon or good evening or good morning to everybody, wherever you are at in the world. My name is Sean. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is August 3rd, 1981. My home group is 435 Compton Intergroup in the city of Compton, California. And I just want to welcome every one of the newcomers that identified. Anybody that didn't identify, I want to tell you that you're welcome in AA here today as the flowers in May, and that you're loved, and that I hope you hear something that I say or somebody else says that resonates with you to help you keep coming back. Today is the day we don't drink, and the topic that I chose was that reading that the gentleman did. We saw we needn't always be bludgeoned and beaten into humility. It could come quite as much from our voluntary reaching for it as it could from unremitted suffering. A great turning point in our lives came when we sought for humility as something we really wanted rather than as something we must have. It marked the time when we could commence to see the full implication of step 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. And I believe what Bill is describing here is the transformation, from self-centered to other-centered, from self-reliant to God-reliant. And when I say God-reliant, God is a label. So whatever that means to you, I'm going to tell you just like them old timers told me, your conception of God. I'm not really concerned with the label. What I'm connected to is the power behind the label. So if it's God, Yahweh, Buddha, great reality, Buddha, Allah, whatever works for you, creator, all of those apply. The God that I've found in Alcoholics Anonymous wants to have a relationship with me and everyone else wherever we're comfortable meeting God. If that's in nature, if that's in music, if that's in art, if that's on your knees praying, if that's in a meeting, God wants to have a relationship with me. I didn't believe that when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I hated God. I didn't want nothing to do with God. I was raised Catholic. I am a survivor of childhood trauma and abuse at Catholic school at the hands of a nun. It shaped and formulated many, many years of my life. I just give you that little bit of information to hopefully help you understand in the short time that I have to talk to you about this transformation that took place within me. We're all wounded. Every one of us has our wounds. And this beautiful program of Alcoholics Anonymous that I believe is divinely inspired is a path, not the only path, but it's the path that worked for this drunk to healing. The 12-step process. See, before I could get to that transformation that Bill so eloquently talked about in step 7 on page 74, I had to have what we call in Compton that thoroughly whooped ass. I had to hit a bottom. And I had a bottom at 16 years old in relation to alcohol and outside issues. I did that. So I like to say I got freedom from the bondage of alcohol at 16. I did not get freedom from the bondage of self until I was 51 years old. That's a lot of ego-fed propositions leading to self-imposed crisis. I have a litany of terror of great suffering in my life. A guy that I like to read, Richard Rohr, he talks about, and so does Eckhart Tolle, talks about it also, another gentleman that I appreciate. They're off by 1 percentage point, but Richard Rohr says 98% of people come to God through great suffering, and only 2% come to God through great love. Eckhart Tolle says it's 99% to 1%. And my story is about great suffering. See, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get what I want. I was dying of untreated alcoholism for year after year after year, decade after decade, without an ounce of alcohol in my system. You know, I want what I want when I want it, and I don't care who it affects. The book describes it as suffering from the delusion that I could wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if I just managed well. And I had quite a bit of success in the material world. But see, I always suffered from this sense of lack my whole life. Something was missing. And no matter how many things I acquired, no matter how much money I made, the status I had in my career, the zip code that I lived in, the cars in the driveway, the purebred dogs that I walked through the neighborhood, the pretty wife, the stock portfolio, I could never escape that sense of lack. I would win, and then what's next? I would start to feel that fear, and it's self-centered fear. See, I'm driven by fear, self-seeking, self-pity, self-absorption. See, nobody can love me enough. There's no pile of material possessions high enough or wide enough. There's no pill for what I got. I suffer from a spiritual malady. You know, the big book says it, and I agree. My experience is a manifesto of that. Selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my trouble. And I thought it was the booze. I almost killed myself in the pursuit of money, property, and prestige. See, all these obsessions of the mind. I pivoted from not drinking, going to meetings, having a sponsor, dynamic sponsorship, a great home group. My sponsor died. I walked away from my home group. I'm going to stay sober on my own. I'll go to some different meetings, but all they did at those meetings was talk about God and the steps. And I didn't want nothing to do with that. I left AA, didn't drink, you know. But as I said, I was dying of untreated alcoholism. See, I do everything obsessively, you know, whether it's sex, love, money, work, exercise, food, gambling. I do all of it to extremes. There is no balance in my life of self. I took most of those distractions to the bare metal. See, all my human resources had to fail me. That's that. My life is unmanageable. That's step one, deep experience. I was nowhere near step two in relation to my life because there isn't a power greater than me. I always win. I always got to move. You all are playing a zero-sum game. I will win at any cost. When you are done and you're tired of it and you don't want to play no more, I'm just getting started. So I can't come to believe that there's a power greater than me because I'm playing God. So I'm nowhere near a decision until all my human resources failed me. At 28 years sober, coming apart at the seams, needing a drink, I had that second step proposition experience. God's everything or he's nothing. What's your choice going to be, Sean? I could hear them footsteps of King Alcohol coming up on me. You know, and the king whispers all those sweet nothings in your ear, and it all makes sense in that moment. A drink will take care of this. You know, fully vindicated. I'm right. That self-pity. God, it's so disgusting. You know, and I cried out for help. See, I thought I had very intellectually and cleverly dismissed the whole concept of God. Your magic friend that solves all your problems. You're so weak and pathetic. I didn't need any of that. I got this. And in my dark night of the soul, there was only King Alcohol or God. And I cried out for help. And that help came immediately. It wasn't, oh yeah, I've been waiting for you. It's about time. Now I'm going to need you to do a few things before I hook you up. No, that isn't what happened. I was able to get out of that car that I'd been sitting in for over an hour, paralyzed, coming apart, ready to drink. And I was able to walk into the house that I'm sitting in now. And I remember distinctly walking up the pathway thinking, this God that they've been talking about, my whole sobriety, I've been around here almost 30 years. If this God that they've been talking about isn't real, I don't stand a chance. I'm done. I'm going to drink or I'm going to die because there's nothing else. I got nothing else. And I remember a second thought. It just came over me. It wasn't really a thought. It was a feeling. It's all right. It's going to be all right. And I got to sleep that night. Things started changing immediately. Got a call from my job. They sent me up north in California. I was up there for 4 months. Went through another series of going through the steps. I had a sponsor for a couple of years now. I forgot to tell you that I went 18 years without a sponsor. When my first sponsor died, I was being sponsored by a fool myself. And things started to change. But see, these old ideas and belief systems, who Sean thought he was and projected himself to be, all that had to go. Everything but the multiplication tables has to go. I had to completely surrender. Well, I'm of the educational variety. The 12 and 12 describes it as unraveling the violent twist to our personality. That took me about 6 years. At 34 years sober, I almost killed myself behind my two biggest defects of character, lust and greed. See, hadn't given those areas of my life to God. I thought I knew more about money and women than God. I got this. And I literally almost killed myself, chasing women and money. And I finally got to the place where I had another revolutionary realization. The rules apply to Sean. That may seem simple to all of you, but that was so foreign to me. I thought the rules were for chumps, suckers, church folk, and people that just couldn't figure out the angles in life. And I realized that the rules apply to me. And I realized I had to give every area of my life to God. That's been almost 9 years ago. Man, I've been living on that someday street. I've been in the sunlight of the Spirit. My whole life has changed. COVID happened. It was life-changing for so many people, and in a negative way. So many people lost everything, lost their lives. But the positives of it were this platform we have here, this virtual reality, a lot of time in contemplation and prayer and meditation and reflection, a lot of book studies that me and my friends created, deep dives into our big book and our 12 and 12 and some outside literature. I have thrived and gotten such a deep conscious connection with God and my brothers and my sisters over the last 4 years. I'm truly grateful, So I no longer need to be beaten and bludgeoned. So there comes a point after making that decision. See, now I'm right with God, but I got to get right with myself. And that happens in 4 through 7. That healing, that becoming accountable, responsible, no longer blaming others, no longer being the victim. And I get right with myself, and those wounds start to heal. And I realized in step 7, even though it had happened prior to that, just how deep my connection was with my higher power. I trust and rely on God today, and I'm anchored to spiritual principles. I've lived most of my life living by my thinking and my emotions. And that always leads to a self-imposed crisis. That always leads to that sense of lack. That always leads to all those bedevilments on page 52. The only thing that's changed in my life, I had a lot of physical sobriety, financially well off. My life's pretty simple and pretty good. I no longer suffer from that sense of lack. I found out what that was. That was the absence of a relationship with God, with a power greater than myself. That's what's really truly changed in my life. AA gives us the answer on the front end. Come to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity, sound mind, right thinking and action, pure motives, clear thinking, right thinking. And then what it takes to get to that, what it takes to get to connected to that conscious connection to that power. And then through that seeking humility, now living this life in great love instead of great suffering. I don't have to be torn up for me to follow direction, for me to do what the spiritual principles require of me. What would the master have me do? I'm reaching for that, this channel of humility, because it's who I am. See, this was done to me. This isn't an intellectual experience. And so many people try to wrap their heads around this, and they want to know what it's going to look like, where they're going to end up, what they're going to do, and how it's going to happen. And, well, give me the 5 things that I got to say, do, and believe for me to get what you got. And I have to tell every one of them, I can't tell you that. All I can tell you is if you have this experience, and if you make that decision after coming to believe, and after coming to see that you're powerless and your life's unmanageable, and you launch a course of vigorous action, you're going to have your own experience. See, I believe that God is a verb. God is experiential, not theoretical, not intellectual. So I invite you all to have your own experience. You know, what do you got to lose? You can always go back to your drinking and your stinking thinking, playing God, running the show. I don't think it's working out too well for anybody who identified as new, or you probably wouldn't be here in this meeting.
Hate to stop you, but you got 2 minutes, brother.
Okay, thank you. I just want to wrap up with this. This way of life is the best life I've ever known. I was given this. I'm so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. They took a young child who hated God, who thought he knew everything, who thought he was cleverer than everybody, who was full of fear, who was so wounded, traumatized, you know, and it transformed me into a good man, a good human being, a child of God, an agent of God. It brought me back to my Father's table. It allowed me to come here and offer love, offer my service, to meet with anybody as my peer, as my brother, as my sister. I believe in the oneness of all. And this is the promise of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, this is what I have found. This is what I have experienced. And I invite all of you to have your own experience in this 12-step process, so you can allow AA to help you become who you're always meant to be. Thank you very much.